Hello and welcome back to Faffing with Friends, and this week we're going to talk about a beautiful city of London. I'm joined by...
Lawrence.
And Ivaylo.
So lads, let's start off straight away with the question, how long have we lived in London, roughly?
I mean, I have been here since I was, I think, 8.5, and I'm now, at the time of recording, 23, so I've been here longer than a decade now.
A big boy.
I've really gotten to know somewhat this city. I mean, I don't know it that well because I don't like going out much, but I do know like the sites I like, and I know I know the atmosphere. I've gotten used to living here to some degree. When I came here first, it was very foreign because I hadn't moved here from another city. I'd moved here from like a small town. So the paradigm shift of coming to London from like small town in Romania immediately was at first absolutely horrible. This place is, massively confusing for me as an 8-year-old. I didn't know how to do anything. I didn't know how to use like the tube. I didn't know how to use buses. I didn't know how to get anywhere. It was just like, I stayed home. I went to school. I saw a few friends now and then after school, and that was it for a while because the city was just confusing.
I mean,
yeah.
I pretty much agree with Lawrence on every single one of those statements. My first exposure to London came in 2009. I actually came here to visit my dad for Christmas. It was a pretty good Christmas, although unfortunately we couldn't lift off on the airport immediately, so that was a whole issue. So from the start, it was a bit of a dodgy experience.
Yeah, the delay.
There was a huge delay, and we came here for a while, and it was just for like the few weeks of Christmas, and I got to experience, as Lawrence mentions, this insanely huge shift in perspective and in just everything else. It was like a whole new world had just been opened up to me. And then when I went back to Bulgaria, I was like the coolest kid in school for about a week because I had gone back to London and brought them flipping Kinder Happy Hippos because those were actually very expensive where I come from. But again, similar to Lawrence, I come from like, I wouldn't say like a village, but I still come from a very small town where like we don't even have fast food restaurants. Like KFC and McDonald's are like a myth over there, and to suddenly come to London and see those chains on every single street corner, it was quite intimidating to say at first, but that was my very first experience, and later on I'll talk about more when we came in and when we settled in and how we actually began to live in London, but that's for me was just like the start of my experience in London.
Right. So I actually moved here the same time you came to visit your dad in 2009.
Oh, really? Interesting.
And yeah, I was about 16, I think, just turned 16. So we moved down here mostly because of family, because we have family in London, a lot of family, a lot of distant relatives and so on. We moved down from Sheffield. And Sheffield is, it's not exactly it is a city. It's quite a big city, actually. It's built on 7 hills, just like Rome is. And it's a great place, but we used to visit London from Sheffield quite regularly before we moved. But it came to a point where we had friends, but we didn't really have any relatives in Sheffield, and that became hard to cope with. So we decided that we wanted to move for 2 reasons. We wanted to move to London, A, to be closer to family, and B, hopefully so that me and my brother could get a good education here at one of the schools and so on. The funny thing is, Lawrence talks about how he didn't know how to use public transport or anything. I got a job straight away when we came to London, and on my first day, I was supposed to report at 9 a.m. to my work. So I got on the bus to go to my work, and I didn't know which direction the buses were going at the time. I didn't have navigation on my phone, right? The bus took me in the opposite direction of where I was supposed to be going. And I get off at the last stop and I say, is this, blah, blah, blah. And the driver says, no, that's literally the opposite direction. If you want, stay in the bus and I'll take you there. So, but luckily enough, I left at like 7 a.m. So I got to my job on time. And then I got an interview for a different job months later in central London, which I'd never been to, like, other than maybe Westminster, right? Mm-hmm. Again, I had no clue how to get to the offices where I was having my interview because it was so bloody big. So I had to go into a Waterstones and buy an atlas. Those A to Z atlases that you used to get of the city?
We still have those.
Yes, yeah. just so I can find where I was on the map and bloody get to my interview on time so I could get the job. Luckily, I got to my interview. I got the job. So it worked out well. It was worth the £9 that I paid. And then I never again used that map. I still have it, but I never again used it.
Speaking of that map, I was so gassed because we got that map as soon as we came here, and even now, my dad sometimes still uses it to look stuff up, even though we have all this information on our phone with like Google Maps and all that kind of stuff. And I was so gassed when that A to Z map was a crucial fragment of a Sherlock episode on BBC, because it was used by Sherlock. It was used by Sherlock to solve a crime, and I was like, oh my god, I know that reference. I recognize it.
Speaking of, have you ever been to Baker Street?
I have, yes. Yeah, many times.
Yeah, I think we all three of us have been.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
We usually just always pass through Baker Street when we go to the airport, because we usually like fly from Luton, and you always get on the coach and it always passes through Baker Street, and you always see the Sherlock Holmes Museum, which is pretty great. I recommend going there. It's quite a small little kind of museum, but it's worth the visit if you're into that kind of stuff, obviously. But yeah, man.
Back to like when I moved here, right? So one of the things that was, especially like you mentioned about public transport, so scary at the time was, where I came from, there really wasn't any. You know, like there was a bus that passed by our town and you could get on and get to like a nearby city, but it would come like twice or three times a day, and if you missed it, that was it, right? It was a one-way thing and back. So you had to have a car, you know, back where I lived before London to get anywhere. But then when I got here, and it was like, nobody has a car. Nobody even bothers to learn how to drive, because the public transport, the tube system, the buses, you know, they cover pretty much the entire city. It's almost less efficient to drive because you'll get stuck in like the traffic, which I remember when I first experienced that too. And I was like, my God, this city's... I hated that about this city. The traffic was horrid.
Not to mention car maintenance.
Oh yeah. And one of the things, like Ivaylo mentioned, one thing that really changed things for me in London was the first time I got a smartphone, because obviously it was after I moved here that I ever saw a smartphone. But having like navigational capabilities on my smartphone, it changed everything for me about London, because suddenly I didn't feel like I would ever be like, oh no, I'm lost, because I could be like, you know, which line do I need to take to where, to what station, etc., etc. That really made the city open up for me a lot back then, because beforehand I was worried, you know, like I'd get on a tube, I'd get lost, I'd be like, how the hell do I get back home?
Do you have any funny stories about getting lost? Because obviously we heard Joe's perspective of getting on the opposite bus, but do you have any stories about like how did you ever get lost in London, and how did you?
I remember one time I was supposed to like go meet a friend somewhere, right? And there was no way to get there by tube. So I had to take the buses, and the buses are far more confusing. And this was, again, before I had like a smartphone that could do anything. So I had to like get on a bus, and I realized like after 7 or 8 stations that the one I was looking for just wasn't coming up. And I'm just like, oh no, where am I? Where did I end up? And I was like,
oh no,
I didn't know. It took me like an hour to figure out where I was, and then make my way back to where I started, and then make my way to where I was supposed to meet this friend. And obviously, they didn't appreciate that very much.
Yeah, it's a real big journey when you start to like get to know London. It's absolutely huge, and I've always said to myself, and I am gonna do this one day once it's safer. I'm gonna climb on the very first number bus. So I'm gonna start on number 1. And ride from station to station, from stop to stop, and then do that for every single numbered bus. I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna learn this city. And one of these days, man, as soon as it's safer,
you're doing like a World's End style pub crawl, but with buses.
Yes. I'm gonna ride each number of London bus from start to finish in both directions, and I will become the master of London. Watch.
The master of London.
Watch. Well, to all you listeners out there, if I don't do it, you have a right to come and put me in jail.
You know what they say, Ivaylo, the wheels on the bus go round and round, and I'm sure you're going to have a pretty fun journey around the capital in 80 days.
Absolutely. But yes.
I mean, I'm glad to know that like your bucket list isn't anything too crazy. Like we could probably get that done if that's one of your like life goals.
But you know, to answer everyone's questions, I've lived in London for approximately 11 years now. We moved in after that little Christmas visit. We came in 2010. I celebrated my 12th birthday here, which obviously like Lawrence was way younger than me when he came here, but I still feel that like there was still the same sense of confusion, and that's the same sense of unknowingness, fear, but also joy. Also like a lot of joy and a lot of, oh my god, like, is this what the real world is? Because back home, again, like, as I mentioned, it was quite a small town where everyone knew each other, and town centre wasn't like a few blocks away from my house. And I was very confused because when people said here, oh, let's go hang out in the centre, I was like, okay, that's probably somewhere close. And I realized, it's a 2-hour bus journey to the actual centre of London. And then when you get to the centre of London, what is the centre of London? Is it Leicester Square, Piccadilly Circus? Well, what do you mean, the centre of London? Where are you going?
Let's go sit in on Parliament.
Yeah, that's City of Parliament. Yeah, like, where's the centre of London? And it's some of the many things that you come to like appreciate and you come to realize about the small town. Like, everything is close, everyone knows each other. Not the case in London.
I have like a big tangent I want to go on based on that specifically.
Go on.
So I remember that one of the things that struck me about coming here was, even though it's such a big city and you have so many options and there's so many people and you're never really alone, I felt way more, even now, I feel way more isolated here than I ever do when I'm back in my like hometown from where I came from. Because, knowing everyone and knowing everywhere and being able to, knowing it like the back of your hand, knowing the people, knowing that they know you, it felt way less isolating than London does. Here, you're like stuck in a place, really. And, if your friends are too far away, they can only see you now and then. If, it's weird. Because, like, back there, I'd cross the street. And, there lives my friend across the road from me. If we're hanging out, we literally just walk across the street, go sit down on our couch and, hang out and talk, play games, whatever. Here, it would be like, we have to plan this a few days ahead of time. We have to make sure we know where we're meeting. We have to make sure everyone's, prepared to make a journey. You
have to calculate traffic, all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. It's so much more difficult to just be social and outgoing. And that's weird because you'd think it would be the opposite in a city. But because of the way it is, because of the way everyone lives, in different areas, and everyone's has to do a lot to get to each other, and there has to be a lot of pre-planning because of how complicated and large the city is, and you have to decide on what to do when you meet up. It's a lot harder, and you find that like you hang out a lot less than you would have if you were all just in a small town seeing each other every day.
And there you have it, folks, the reason why Lawrence is yet to be in my house. I've invited this man over so many times, and the response I get is, it's too long of a journey. I don't want to travel. And I'm like, bro, come on, man. Come on.
Well, the solution is clearly you all move in with me. I mean, problem solved, isn't it?
Maybe, eventually. I don't know.
Eventually. So, I want to ask you guys a very important question, but before I do, I want to know when you first ever encountered London in media. Like, for example, for me, it was when I used to watch Mr. Bean episodes, and, he would go around London, and I was like, this is before, I'd ever visited London, and I would be like, this is a very interesting and enchanting city. I'd like to go there one day, and I'd never knew I would be living here one day.
This is a very pleasant surprise because you got it spot on. Exactly where I first saw London in media. My dad would send me back stuff because he was living here way before us, right? And I don't remember how, but I got a bunch of Mr. Bean episodes at some point. It might be from him, it might be from somewhere else. I don't know. I can't remember exactly. But I saw Mr. Bean and I saw London and I was like, what are these roundabout things? What is going on? This place is so odd. So I had this pre-existing image of place that is always grey and where there's tiny cars that are green and there's weirdos like Mr. Bean all around. And it's when I came here, I was like, some of that was accurate. There's some truth to this idea that I had.
The greyness, certainly.
How about you, Ivaylo?
I'm not entirely sure, but if I have to give you a solid answer, I would probably say Harry Potter. That's pretty much. I was one of those people who believed that the British were all about wizards and witches and muggles and stuff like that. The whole stuff with Diagon Alley. It was just like. See, I even pronounced that wrong. It's Diagon Alley, right? Diagon Alley?
Diagon Alley, yeah.
I would be sent in the wrong chimney with that.
I like to imagine the moment Ivaylo landed in London, he ran at the first brick wall.
just crashed and burned.
It's funny you say that. It's funny you say that because the first time we travelled from Sheffield to London, we got off at King's Cross. And I just kept looking for Platform 9 and 3/4.
Yes,
right?
it was the same
Because, of
for us.
course,
We went to King's Cross straight away, and I was like, this is where Harry took the train, isn't it? And I was like, well,
yeah.
where's the wall, bro? Where's the wall? But yeah, it was probably the first like proper like incarnation of London which I saw. Also, I already mentioned one, but BBC's Sherlock. That's another great one, which is set in modern day London. It's an amazing series. Go watch it.
I think that's started way after we came here.
Yeah,
and I think I've said it before, but I don't like that series.
Yeah, I know,
me
but
and Ivaylo are
still
very at odds.
It's still
Leave that for a TV episode part 2.
Yes. Maybe.
But when I first came to London was in 2000, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the Harry Potter movie, the first one, was being advertised everywhere. And I had no clue what Harry Potter was. And my aunt, who lives here who lived here at the time, still lives here. She mentioned it to me, and she was like, "I think you'd be really interested in this." And I was maybe 7 or 8, and I had no clue what Harry Potter was. So I read the books. Someone got me the books as a gift. Read the books, watched the movie, absolutely fell in love with the series, right? But again, we'll leave that for an entirely different episode, I'm sure. But yeah, also, Harry Potter had a lot of London in it, so that also gave me an idea of what the city was like. So, okay, so tell me then, what are some of the favourite places that you've visited and favourite activities maybe that you like to do in London?
Well, I think one of the things that I do love about this city is very specific, and that's I'm a massive mark for like architecture and different styles of architecture. And the first time I ever came here, I was blown away because I had never seen, the first time I saw St. Paul's Cathedral or the Houses of Parliament or the Old Bailey or any of, the British Museum, the Imperial Museum, these places, the way they're built, the way they look, that Gothic, Victorian architecture, it was the selling point for me for what I love about the city the most. It's the aesthetic. When I see London and I see those specific places, the ones I like seeing the most, the ones I like going to and getting like multiple photos every time I go and see, it's such a like unique feeling. I've never seen buildings like that. I'd never seen architecture of that level before I came here. The first time I saw St. Paul's Cathedral and then went inside and just the size of that place, it was like, it's mind-blowing. You come from like a town where you have like one small church and you come here and you see a cathedral the size of like a square mile or something. Like did you climb up to the town.
Did you climb up to the top of St. Paul? Like to the very, very top? I
don't think so. No.
You missed out. When we went there, we climbed up to the top of it, and there were some amazing stairs, and it was just absolutely wonderful to like see the entirety of London from the very, very top, and it's just it's an absolute beauty. I absolutely agree.
One thing I did do. At A-levels, I did a lot of work experience with a barrister and in different like law-based type of work, right? Mm-hmm. And one of my placements was with a barrister who had to be at the Old Bailey for a few days. And it was so charming to me, waking up, getting on the train, going to the Old Bailey every morning, and that's where you're doing your work and that's where you're going. It's like, it was incredible. It's probably my favorite work experience I ever had, just because it was at the Old Bailey, and because every time I came in or every time I had lunch in midday, I'd go outside, sit on the bench, eat my lunch, just stare at this building and how incredible it is.
Do you remember which inns the chambers were at?
I think Gray's Inn.
Gray's Inn, yeah. The inns are great. I've been to, I think, Lincoln, Middle and Inner. I've never been to Gray's. My favorite has to be Inner Temple, I think. It's just so beautiful. And you get to go see Temple Church, which I went to just before the Armistice Day Remembrance events in 2019, I think. Mm-hmm. And it's just when you go there just before that time, there's something about the area itself. It's got some sort of aura that really attracts you. So I agree with you about the whole architecture. And what I love about London is that how much the heritage has been conserved, especially the architecture, right? Especially some places, even though some of them have been rebuilt. That's completely fair enough. St. Paul has been definitely rebuilt, and so many other places for obvious reasons. But still, it's been able to maintain that charm of the city that probably not many other capitals have. Like, I was looking up for this episode some quotes, and I found in my old notes from English studies a quote from Sophie von La Roche when she visited London. I'll read it out for you guys and see what you think. She says, quote, "In many ways, London stands for far, far more than Paris, especially in the near-lying districts and its ordinary city architecture where so much general prosperity is evident, far more pleasing to a philanthropist's heart than is the sight of 100 palaces, the property of might and wealth, jammed up against thousands of miserable hovels." So it's a very interesting quote because she's talking about, this evident prosperity, this hundreds of palaces jammed up against thousands of miserable hovels. There is that, idea of Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities, right? So you do have the beautiful architecture and the grand, opulent palaces and so on. But on the other hand, you do have certain areas that really don't stand up.
I think
much
she's
to that trope.
describing Paris.
Yeah,
there.
because I was just about to say, I've been to Paris, and if you've seen Paris, and if you've seen like places like the Louvre, that is some extravagant wealth, brother.
Mm-hmm. And then you see it like up against the actual places where people live nearby, and it's like the shift is massive.
I mean, Buckingham Palace doesn't look that fancy at all. It just looks like another building, but it's just I feel like the contrast is pretty like overextended. I feel like that can be applied to pretty much any single metropolis, in my opinion. You have your wealth and you have your absolute money people, and then you have like slums.
Absolute money.
Yeah, the rich people, Lawrence, I'm sorry, they exist. But to answer your question about my favorite places, I actually have a lot of those. And if I'm allowed to go on a bit of a ramble here, when we first came here, my dad made sure that I was familiar with the history of the place I was in. So first thing we do when we come here for real in 2010, we go to the Imperial War Museum. We go to the Natural History Museum. We hit up all these museums. And this was before the Imperial War Museum was refurbished. So it was like pretty absolutely amazing, authentic, all that kind of stuff. There were two exhibitions which I absolutely loved, and I've been to multiple times, which unfortunately they're no longer there. There was a World War I trench experience, which you had to go through the actual trench. You remember that, don't you? Because the stench of that flippin' experience stuck with you forever. That was some disgusting stench, and it was the most accurate portrayal of like a trench I had seen ever. And the second one was the Bliss Experience, where you sat in like a bomb shelter and you heard like the Blitz coming down and crashing down on you. And
that one I do not remember.
Oh, fair enough. And you had to walk around through the rubble of like East End London and stuff like that. To continue on, another favorite place of mine is I actually really, really like Crystal Palace Park. It's one of my favorite parks because of the history it has, obviously with the Crystal Palace being a iconic building which hosted the Great Exhibition. It unfortunately burned out in a fire in 1936. It was forever destroyed. But even so to this day in the park, the only thing that remains are the steps of the palace. And I just love going there and just chilling on those steps and wondering, man, it would have been nice if we still had that giant building, which was also used as like a social kind of like dance hall kind of stuff. And I was wondering, man, it would have been nice to like go inside this massive building, but unfortunately, as we say, it's been pretty much destroyed and no trace of it. But yeah, those are some of my favorite historical places, which I think
a lot of my experience with like a lot of these places also comes from, I ended up doing work experience that took me to a lot of the places I liked because that's what I was like gunning for. So I also had I think it was a week or two working in the Houses of Parliament, shadowing like an MP.
Beautiful.
And I remember the first time they gave us the like insider tour of the place, right? And they're like, be careful on this set of stairs. Sometimes there's danger that some of the roof might fall down. We have to like rush when we go around here. Yeah, and it was like a certain area was being like renovated, so the roof was just like, it was like soggy and falling down, and they're like, we have to change this section of the roof. It's not looking great. It's dangerous. But it was like the authenticity, I wasn't getting like the tourist view where it's like, we're showing you the pretty parts. Please stay out of the back. I was getting, the entire inside. I was seeing, all the chambers. I was allowed to sit, anywhere in the chambers when the MP would be in the chambers and we'd be there for the talks. I got to see the Houses of Parliament in like a way very few people do, and I got to learn so much more from like the people working there, about them, and the staff and like all the security and other members, and it was so fascinating. It was just like the Old Bailey. It was a joy to go in for the work experience, not for the work itself, but just the location of where I'm going. That's what kept me waking up in the morning excited to go.
For any potential employers out there, if your company does not have a near-death experience, Lawrence will not work for you. Lawrence has to work with like the leaky roof about to collapse on his head at any minute. That's how the man functions.
If your roof isn't ancient enough that I can see it cracking as I stare at it, that it is not the right roof for me.
My God, man!
Did you go to the pub in the palace?
Yes, we did.
Yeah. That's a pretty decent pub. I would say for my favorite places, you both sort of probably mentioned it already. So I love the museums. I love the fact that most of the museums are just free to enter and free to go to. I'm really glad that was something that the government here decided to do. And obviously that area, Westminster itself is just a very mesmerizing place to visit. Whitehall, even just is it St. James's Park?
Yeah,
that we tend to go to, around the palace, the Buckingham Palace. Those are just really beautiful places near the river, and it's especially at night time where you're just walking with no aim and with no sort of target or anything. You're just walking with friends and you're just talking and you're just
London
enjoying.
is a very good place for wandering.
Yes,
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yes. And speaking
Absolutely,
of museums, if I'm allowed to go on a little anecdotal story once again from museums, I am actually not very welcome at the Tower of London. And I'm about to explain why. So
Ivaylo escaped.
Lock him up in the tower.
I did not escape from the Tower of London, but this was in A-level history back in sixth form, and we go on a trip to the Tower of London, as you do. And we go on a trip, and we split up into little groups, and I'm with a teacher, and we're obviously walking around through London, and we see, once we get to the tower, there is an exhibition of a bed, one of the king's beds. I believe it was an Edward. I can't tell you which Edward, but King Edward's bed. Like, it's just there behind a little velvet rope. And
don't tell me you went and just laid in it.
And I'm thinking to myself, man, I wonder what it'd be like to feel that bed. And the teacher, okay, this is very crucial. The teacher says, you can go and take a picture of it. And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go and take a picture of it. Now, I didn't know that she meant stay by the velvet rope. So I cross the velvet rope, I go and I sit down on this King Edward's bed. The alarm goes buzzing off everywhere. People start running away.
Oh, no.
There is this couple next to us with cameras, like the most stereotypical tourists ever with cameras. They start bolting as well. Everyone starts bolting because I went and sat on King Edward's bed, and then afterwards the school was like, yeah, you shouldn't have done that. Now the tower doesn't want us back anymore. And I was
boy.
But at least I have a story to tell that I've sat on King Edward's bed. So you're welcome.
So Ivaylo, how does King Edward's bed feel?
It was actually, not gonna lie, it was actually a very, very nice bed. It was very comfortable. My ass has not felt that comfortable in a while. So, honest to God, it was a very comfy bed. But again,
I did something similar at Parliament, but I didn't get in trouble because no one paid attention, so I got away with it. I sat in the speaker's chair, which you're not supposed to do. When I was doing my work experience, I was just like, this chair looks so cool. I want to sit in it for 5 seconds. I just need to. So I waited until it was after hours and no one was in anymore and everyone's going home or at the bar and everyone's relaxed and chilled. No one's paying attention. I just sit in it for 10 seconds. I'm like, yeah, this is cool. I wish I could sit here permanently.
Was John Barcrow speaker then?
I think he was, yeah.
Probably he was. But man, that's okay. It's nice to see we've graced some great historical monuments with our butts, Lawrence. Anyways,
I don't think I've sat anywhere I'm not supposed to in London.
Fair.
So that's that.
You can't be part of the cool.
The historical day Lawrence stole John Barcrow's seat.
And the historical day I sat on King Edward's bed. But just some of those stories. If I'm allowed to mention something else, another favorite place of mine is actually Selhurst Park, which is a football stadium, and I'm gonna go explain why. I love football in this family. I think that London is a phenomenal city if you're a football fan. Obviously, I don't really like the stereotypes about football fans. I mean, some of them are absolute deplorable pricks, but others, such as myself and my dad, we just love spending time together. We just love the bonding experience that is going to a stadium and experiencing all those emotions live with the team and with everyone else. But yeah, if you're a big football fan, I feel like London has tons of stadiums. Obviously, we support Crystal Palace, so we go to a... Crystal Palace isn't that much of an expensive team. You don't have to pay these massive money tickets to watch teams like Chelsea or Arsenal play, but it's still a favorite place of mine, and definitely if you're a football fan, I feel like you're gonna love London for what it is. I've been to some other stadiums as well, notably I've been to Millwall Stadium, but to be honest, I do absolutely love football and I absolutely love the stadiums, and they're some of my favorite places to visit, especially Selhurst Park. And yeah, Red and Blue Army, let's go. Okay, sorry, I'm done, go on.
I mean, I think everyone here knows that I'm not the big sportsman. I don't really like. I like Formula One, and that's barely sport. It's obviously physically demanding and stuff, but like, it's not sport. Like, I'm going to watch people play anything on a like playing field. I'm watching dudes on a TV race their cars. That's my sport.
Fair enough.
You see, the thing is, I love tennis, right? And I always watch Wimbledon when it's on. But I'm not sure if I'd ever go there and, watch while I'm there, especially in the summer when it's really hot and you get really clammy and sweaty and you just
everyone
don't want
looks
to be
miserable in the stands at Wimbledon.
I've actually been to Wimbledon. It is absolutely scorching hot.
Exactly.
I got so badly sunburned at Wimbledon. It was just insane. And I wasn't even in like the stadium. I was outside, because the whole Wimbledon experience, you go to obviously see the parks, but you have to have like tickets to obviously enter the courts. So we had to like line up outside and just watch there with like big hats, and it was scorching hot, absolutely blazing. And those strawberry ice creams they have, like 10 quid per like a little scoop of ice cream. No. But yeah, man.
There's a part of your question, Joe, that I find interesting that we didn't really touch on. You asked like our favorite places, right? But you also mentioned activities, and for me, it's a very weird thing with this city. I don't like doing much here. I like going to these places and wandering and seeing them and like going to museums and seeing exhibits and stuff. And it's mostly like very passive activities that I like about the city. I never like go and, to specific pubs or clubs or bars or anything like that. I go and just walk, I go for long like walks. I go see parts of the city again. I take pictures. I like the location, but I don't feel like for me, there's very much I enjoy like actively doing here. There's maybe one exception, and that's I think all of us have at least once been to the Globe to watch a play. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely incredible.
I really, really love the Globe. It might be one of my favorite theaters. I love the open air part of it. I've met like the cast from multiple plays backstage after because I just hang around. It's a really cool place. I love Shakespeare. Some of us studied him. I studied him.
Joe
studied him. I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
Certainly.
So like we all know all the plays, and it's just it's really cool to go there, see this Globe that's been like burnt down and rebuilt so many times, but it's still like it feels very genuine and it feels very. This is probably how people experience these plays, I really love that. That's one of the few activities where I'm like, I go and do that.
I'm glad you mentioned theatre because I feel like that's one of the main things about London as well. It has an amazing theatre scene and just around the West End, not even just the Globe, but just like in general, you have the West End, you have the Barbican. They're all absolutely amazing. I've seen so many Shakespeare plays in the Barbican, from Romeo and Juliet to Hamlet. The best play I've been to was actually Hamlet with Andrew Scott in the title role, again from Sherlock, which absolutely you hate, but it's okay. He's an amazing actor, and I absolutely love that play.
Do you remember when David Tennant played Hamlet?
I do. Yes, I do remember.
I went and saw that in person.
I also remember when Benedict Cumberbatch played Hamlet, and he opened up the play with the "to be or not to be" speech because people were just so desperate to see Benedict Cumberbatch enact "to be or not to be." I guarantee you, people went in, saw the opening, and were like, "Yep, that's me. I'm heading out. Left. That's me. I've seen all I need to see." But I do love the theatre stage, and I do think that like London is absolutely an incredible city for like musical and stuff like that. We all know I'm a fan of musicals with my absolutely hot take.
I mean, we both are. We both are.
You have Cats, you have Heather's amazing stuff.
You have Spam-A-Lot.
Spam a lot, and it's just like. I really hope that once the restrictions are lifted, that the industry gets the help it deserves to bounce back.
Oh yeah,
because it is very.
You know, it would be tragic, to see
if that
the West End like theaters and stuff, and all the like theater and musical and all these industries die because of this pandemic in the city, because that's like part of the charm of this city. If that goes, that's one less reason to stay.
This is where Lawrence is going to agree with me, but if I had to choose between killing off the cinema industry or killing off the theater industry, 10 times out of 10, I would kill off the cinema industry.
Oh yeah, cinema dead every day.
You know, cinema dies
I agree with that as well.
If we had to risk, for example, the theaters. But yeah, man,
I actually miss going to the theater.
So
you know, it's if you go with friends, right? You obviously sit there for 2 hours, you don't talk to each other, but it's afterwards that you can really talk about what you experienced there in tandem.
And it's also one of those activities I enjoy doing alone. Like it's so nice. You go. I saw Warhorse back when it was playing, you know, with the big puppet for the horse, and it was so great. I went to it pretty much alone, and it's like, yeah, this is awesome. I'm so glad I went. This is such a good experience. Obviously, yeah, I love taking people with me when they're willing to go, but a lot of people in our generation are not big theater fans. I wonder why.
I'm very annoying when I go to the theater, because I went to the theater with a very close friend and we went to see Macbeth, and I just kept reciting Macbeth, and he had to turn around and say, "Dude, shut up, I'm trying to listen." I'm like, "I'm sorry, I know the speech off by heart," but I'm probably like one of the worst people if I like know the play to go with, because I'm just...
Oh no, you go to Cats or the Ivaylo, you sing every song.
Not shut up and just fanboy all over. But it's absolutely wonderful, as you mentioned. Now, we've talked about a lot of good stuff about London, and can we mention about how it's not all sunshine and rainbows? We don't want to mislead the dear audience into thinking that, but you know, I believe Joe was about to take us in the direction of, you know,
it's about damn time.
Go on, Joe. Go on. Ask.
I mean,
go on.
Of course, I kind of touched upon it earlier, but you know, this whole idea of a city having ugly wallpaper, which is something that Oscar Wilde said about New York.
Can you explain that? I don't really get that. Explain it to me.
I think it was on a press tour he was for one of his books or something in New York, and they asked him, "What do you think of New York?" And he says, "Well, I don't like your art paper; it's ugly." And what he was talking about the skyscrapers and all the other, you know, just those block apartments that were being built at the time, right? So, you know, generally speaking, I'm okay with certain stuff in London. Like, for example, public transport, I can tolerate, apart from probably the Central Line. Because I had to catch that. Because I had to catch that very often, pretty much every day when I had to go to...
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for Lawrence's Gripe Hour.
He's been holding this in for a while, boys.
Years. So, first place I lived in this city, the only line I had direct access to and had to constantly use was the Northern Line, which has no ventilation and is one of the tiniest train lines there is. So when you're on the train, you're very squeezed together. And when it's rush hour, you get to smell other people. You get to feel their sweat as they rub up against you and push more and more like sardines into a can into those fucking trains. So immediately, I had a horrible experience when it came to public transport. I hated it. It could give me panic attacks. It still does to this day if it's massive rush hour. Sometimes I'll just step off at a platform on a station I shouldn't even be at, just so I can get out of the tube for a while and be like, okay, I'm catching my breath. This place is horrible. I never want to feel this again. Why? Why is this a thing? But then, when I moved, the line I had to use the most was the Central Line. I believe the Central Line has multiple times been voted the worst, public transportation line in this country, right?
Probably.
And there's good reasons for it. When we were going to uni and it was the summer months and I'd have to get on at rush hour and it would just be half an hour to sometimes an hour on there with people literally, chin to chin with me. No space to move. You can't even breathe because the air's so hot because, again, Central Line isn't really ventilated well. The tube might be both. It is incredibly useful. It is incredibly efficient. If you don't have to use it at rush hours, it's great. I love having access to it. I love that it exists. It's very necessary in the city because we've talked about the traffic outside and cars being atrocious. But if you have to use the tube during any rush hours, it is a fucking nightmare. there are very few times in my life where I've been as horribly sweaty and like annoyed and like clenching my jaw and just the experience. I think all of us have had it at least once on that central line, and it's just, you never want to do it again.
You know, it's funny. I used to do work experience at this law firm. I can't say which. And I had to catch the central line to get there. And basically, every day, I wish that I'd never had to use that again, right, in my life. Now, the irony being that for several years afterwards, I did, in fact, have to do that. And there was one day in particular when I was trying to get home. And I think it was maybe 4 or 5 p.m. in the afternoon. And 4 or 5 p.m. in the afternoon on the central line is just Judgment Day.
It's
it
death
is the
hour.
rapture.
That's
it is
the
death
hours
hour.
you want to avoid. Yeah.
There is no way you can get in there. And once you get in there, just like you said, it's absolute sardines. You can barely move. And, you know, every stop, people try to get off, right? Mm-hmm. And the thing is, I don't know what it is, right? So when usually someone has to get off, I get off the train, let people off, and then I get back on the train.
Oh yeah, because there's no other way. No one can squeeze past it.
Yeah, some people, well, sometimes I think what it is some people don't have, they just don't want to give up their space. They
don't
think
have
that if
brains.
they give up their space,
They're absolute pieces
then that's
of
it,
shit.
Right? They don't think, if I get off the train, just let these people go, and I can get back on the train, it's much easier, and people aren't pushed aside like ping balls, right? So that never happened. But anyway, that was one experience.
When Joe arrives at the station, let my people go.
Let my people go. But generally speaking, people on public transport are decent people.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the central line, I think all of that is thrown out the window because everybody's in it for themselves.
Rush hour brings out the worst in absolutely everyone on that on the tube system completely. And I think one more thing I'm going to say is, when we were going to uni, I would stay after lectures and seminars for like up to 3 or 4 extra hours with people to hang out just to miss rush hour.
Yes.
Just because I didn't feel like getting on the train to go back home because I knew what it would be like. So I was like, yeah, I'll wait till 7 or 8. I'll wait till it's dark outside. I don't care. I'd rather literally sit in uni, in the library or anywhere else than go back home on the central line during rush hour.
Yeah, exactly.
I absolutely agree with you guys. And even though I haven't had that many close calls with the Central Line, I do have horror stories of my own, which aren't as bad as, say, the Central Line, but I absolutely agree with the whole mentality of trying to avoid rush hour as best as you can. See, since I've been in education since secondary school, I've always had to travel far. Like, from 40 minutes to an hour and a half is like the most I've traveled to education establishments. Uni, same trend, 40 minutes to an hour. And I would go with the London Overground, which it's not as bad as the Central Line, but it's only 4 carriages, or if you're lucky, in the last few years they added a 5th one. So hooray for that, made no difference whatsoever, like nothing. So again, in the mornings and in the afternoon, packed like sardines. I guess it wasn't as bad because we're not underground. I feel like having rush hour with that many people all clustered together underground is way worse than the London Overground.
Because you feel like the extremest form of claustrophobia.
Yes, the absolute extreme.
I don't get claustrophobic in any other situation, but when I'm like up against the tube wall and someone's just squeezing on me and there's 3 more people getting in on the carriage, it's like, I'm gonna die. This is it.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Whilst we're on the London public transport and commute, I want to mention a few things. First of all, I want to commend the engineering that went into building these, just massive monolithic networks underground. It's just amazing that they were able to achieve this 150 years ago, right? Yeah. Second of all, I want to also commend the public transport workers, without whom this city probably wouldn't function the way it does now. I mean, these are arteries of the city, without which pretty much nobody would be able to get to work. No goods would be able to pass through properly. All the roads would be much more jammed than they already are.
The city would literally not move if everyone had to use a car. It would be over. We'd have to just move out.
That's right. And last thing I want to mention is the culture of public transport. And there is a culture, especially on the underground. There have been books written about the underground.
Don't look people in the eyes. It's the main one.
Right. Or if you're me, look them right in the eye and get more space.
Maybe, yeah.
You know, one fun activity. I mean, I call it a fun activity, but something I used to do a lot was when I caught someone reading something, especially when it was interesting, I'd ask them what they're reading, and that would be like an icebreaker, and we can talk about something. And that's something usually that doesn't happen on commutes because people don't really care to communicate with anyone. They're just there to just get from A to B and pass the time by reading something or listening to music, right? And I also had this moment. It was, I think, in second year. I was I can't remember which line I was in. But the train had to stop because the train ahead had an issue or something, so we were stuck underground for about 10 minutes. And in that moment, I'm sorry to like bring the mood down a little bit, but I had like a weird existential crisis that one day, all of the people who were in the carriage with me, along with myself, would also be buried deep because we'd be dead. And I thought, hold on a minute. What the heck kind of feeling is that? And that's when I started to get claustrophobic. I was like, if this train does not move in the next 5 minutes, I think I'm going to have a panic attack.
Yeah, I've had, like I said, multiple anxiety and panic attacks on the tube during rush hours because of shit like this. And I will say that the TFL staff, like you said, they're gems. Like anytime I do have one and one of the TFL staff members sees me, they'll come up to me. They'll be like, "Are you okay?" Because I'm like sweating and like heaving, and I look like I'm about to drop down onto the tracks and die. And they're just like, "Are you good, sir? Are you having a good time?" No, but thank you for asking.
Time of my life.
Because I'm having a good time.
Having a good time, but it's just absolutely horrific sometimes. I don't think I've ever gotten claustrophobic or had a panic attack, but I do get incredibly angry. I have seething rage. Like, when I'm in a hurry and the train stops and it doesn't move for about 10 minutes, like Joe mentioned, I am in an absolute rage. I'm about to go Incredible
I'm a really
Hulk on
calm and patient person in most situations, but the moment I'm on the tube, it's like the level that I get frustrated by everything is like times by 10. Yeah. Like the tube stops, between stations because another tube isn't running on time, and I'm just like, this fucking city, I swear to God. It's like, I'm tapping my foot, I'm sweating, I'm looking at other people like, get away from me, I need space. Don't sit next to me, I swear to God.
So I wanted to mention something. Speaking of ugly wallpaper, right? I really love the churches in London. I think they're some of the real gems, especially the ones that just stayed as they are, right? Especially the ones that are probably older than some parts of the city that have been rebuilt over and over again. I like visiting them, and I'm glad that they still exist, because on the other hand, you've got this ugly wallpaper, which is these skyscrapers, and they're good. I mean, they're necessary to commerce and everything else, but these things that just sort of don't... I mean, they're part of the city, but they don't seem to mesh with the old architecture, right? And I really love the old architecture. So I wanted to, before we move on to stuff like what accommodation and cost of living is like in London, I want to hear what you guys have to say about the architectural, anything aesthetic about London that you don't like.
So this is weird. There are things that people consider aesthetically ugly that I really love. I love going to places like the Docks, and same thing like in Birmingham and other places here in England, where there's a specific feel and aesthetic that I really appreciate in like certain areas that are considered ugly by some that aren't considered great. I love the whole like streets with like 20 chicken shops type thing as well. And a lot of people, think that's disgusting and ugly and it's terrible. Like you go and there's like 50 different variants of KFC, like KFW, KFP, just down the road.
FFC,
It's really cool. I enjoy it. It's like you walk down the street and there's always shit. There's always something, right? You can stop, have food anywhere. You don't ever feel like there's nothing there. You never feel like, I'm in the middle of nowhere right now. And even the places that aren't so great, the only thing I don't like, it's not something you can really visually see, and that's, the areas with high levels of crime and et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Like, I try to avoid those because obviously I like wandering and walking a lot, and if I did that in those areas, the chances of dying increase tenfold. So,
right, exactly.
I do also agree. I am a huge fan of the whole multiculturalism aspects of the city. I love the fact that there are so many cultures, and as Lawrence mentioned, you can always do whatever you want. You can always familiarize yourself with a lot of different cultures, a lot of different experiences. One of my favorite places in London is Camden Town. I absolutely love Camden Town for how amazing it is.
Yeah, someone took me there like between some of the lockdowns, and I loved it.
Camden's
that place
Camden's absolutely amazing. Camden is the place that I actually lost my concert virginity to. So absolutely amazing. I love Camden. The food there is amazing. Record shops galore, obviously. Love me my records.
Yeah.
I do, as Lawrence mentioned, I also love London foods. Again, all the food from all the different cultures, Japanese, Indian, Caribbean. I absolutely love those. Shout out to Green Pepper, one of my favorite restaurants ever. I do love the whole chicken shop experience. I love it to bits.
It's weird you mentioned Camden Town because I had not seen it until this year when someone took me.
Mm-hmm.
That was the one place. I'd lived near it too at times. I'd just never gone there. And this lovely person took me there and it was like, wow, I've never seen this place.
I can't believe you've never been to Camden. That's so weird.
No one can. It's great.
So
It's like, I'm there and I'm like, this place is so wacky and like, I did not expect it to be as fun as it was going there. And we had like a drink in like an open air, like... bar where they like served you by texting, and it was really interesting. I really liked Camden Town.
Fun fact:
if I may also simp.
Go on.
If I may also simp for London, I agree with both of you. I think it is my favorite city in the world. I've been to a few European cities, especially capitals. I'm not really fond of anywhere else other than here. Like, the first thing on my mind as soon as I land anywhere else is, how soon am I going to get back home? It's not, oh, I'm looking forward to this holiday I'm on or visit I'm on or whatever. But it's obviously, there's the convenience, it's the multiculturalism, it's the history, the heritage, everything about it. I love the city. I hope that I still stay in this city for the rest of my life, live in this city.
Yeah, I'm not that big of a fan, but I'll stay here for a while.
I know. I mean, you have your reasons, and I could say that they're probably valid reasons, right? Mm-hmm. But in my personal opinion, I'm pretty content. Like, if you gave me maybe £10 million, I would not move anywhere else.
Wow, Joe, wow. Like, I would be content with like £1 million to stay in London. God damn. But, see, this is where we enter the territory where, like, I didn't want it to come to this, but it has to come to this. Living costs. Let's just.
Oh no! Ivaylo's pulling out the sword. He's about to decapitate London.
I'm not gonna decapitate. I just wish it was more accessible and cheaper to live here.
Everyone wishes it was more accessible. This place is disgusting cost-wise. It's the worst, like, cost-wise anywhere, I think, that I've seen.
See, with an average salary of like what 35k a year, that's the average London salary, right? Am I mistaken? It's like 35k.
I think it's lower than that.
It's just somewhere around that, but like, you can't be expected to buy houses that are worth like $500,000 with an annual salary like that. It's gonna take you like 9 years to save up money if you're saving like
and by that time the house has doubled in value.
It's absolutely impossible to like.
Yeah, no, this place has a massive like landlord issue and just like property bought by people specifically to rent out because there's so many universities and locales and people want to live here, and it's just gotten to the point where it's atrocious. Yeah. Like, that you will pay more, like, if the rent you pay to live in a shitty place, a small apartment in a bad neighborhood here in London, you could probably afford to like buy a house in a year of saving anywhere else in the world. And that is just atrocious. That is disgusting.
I could probably buy maybe 2-3 houses for all the rent we've paid in London the past 11 years, which is really sad, by the way. But that is the biggest issue, I think. And that's because it's such a popular city. Everybody everybody that can and wants to live here.
And it's not even just people who want to, that because it's such a central locale and it's a big job market, some people feel compelled to live here. They don't really have a choice. Like, the jobs in certain industries, you have to come to one of the big metropolitan cities. Like, you want to work in entertainment, you want to work for the BBC, you want to cover politics, parliament. Where else are you going to go?
You want to work in finance or law or whatever it is.
Exactly.
Yeah. It is absolutely incredible.
That is a good thing. I mean, you could maybe make the argument that we should probably separate our commercial, cultural capitals and so on. And maybe that will solve the problem. But I don't think that's ever going to happen, really.
I mean, to be fair, London,
I don't see that.
London can be viewed as essentially being a different country from the rest of the UK, in my opinion. I genuinely think, like, I mean, it's true. London has a bigger population than my home country. Like, it's not a joke. Like, what's London? London's like 9 million.
What's the? Okay, it doesn't have a bigger one than mine, I don't think. But yeah, it is pretty large.
It's a huge population, and again, I've been to like outside London and I don't feel anywhere the same as I feel in London. Like, London is great. It's amazing, as we mentioned. But I just want the whole house prices to just be a bit lower so that people like us can, like, get a foot in the door.
It's not even be super low. It's be affordable.
Be affordable.
Man. Like,
Yeah,
be
be affordable.
Why can't you be affordable, London? Like, oh man, it's quite sad. It's quite sad when you think about it. But again,
because I don't live where I'd wish I lived right now. Obviously, I'm not going to give any more detail than that. But like where I live, I have shit internet. That's one problem. This city, because of how old certain parts are, a lot of the infrastructure hasn't been upgraded. So where I live, I have like really low cap internet speeds that cost just as much as internet somewhere else where I'd be getting 300 megabytes download, and it's really infuriating. It's the worst. I do so much online. We do this podcast and I upload episodes. It's like it's gonna take 3 hours to upload this 40 minutes. Like, no, why do I live here?
That is absolutely.
Everybody go sign a petition so Lawrence can move closer to.
Yeah, we're gonna be passing a donation basket. Just make sure that Lawrence is.
Yeah, the donation basket consists of you subscribing, giving us likes, all that stuff.
Yes,
exactly. Please do that. Like, seriously, we've got to make this sustainable. So I want to ask you guys about landmarks that you've visited or would like to visit.
I think I've visited every landmark in London that I want to visit, unless there's like other places like Camden Town that I just never considered because it just didn't appeal to me, and someone takes me there and I'm like, I actually like this place that I didn't know I'd like. You know what I mean? I can't really think.
We talked about, just before we came on, we talked about going on to the London Eye, didn't we? And how you don't like the fact that it takes half an hour for it to do a whole cycle.
Because like after 5 minutes, I got the idea and I was like, shit, I've locked myself into this deal for way longer than this, haven't I? And I just had to sit there and be like, we're going in a circle.
I do love the South Bank, and I do think that like some of the landmarks in London are absolutely beautiful. I had the beautiful chance to be the host of my two friends who came here back in 2015, I believe, and we went up and we hit up all the tourist hotspots.
You were the tour guide.
We went, and to be fair, it was some of the first time I was going to these places as well. For me, we went to Madame Tussauds, we went to London Dungeons, which was absolutely amazing. London Dungeons is so funny, and I got picked as a volunteer on the torture chamber, and they had to pretend to shove a torture device up my ass. So that was something that happens. The person listening to this, you know who you are. You came here. You had a good time.
Ladies, you now know what Ivaylo's true fantasy is.
I mean, no, Lawrence, no.
Isn't that how King Edward got killed?
Yes.
He had a perker up his.
I believe so.
So you've not only sit on his bed, Ivaylo, but you've had the experience of the way he passed away out of this world.
His butt was punished for sitting on that bed.
Oh my God! Yes. We've come full circle, boys. I sat in King Edward's bed in the Tower of London,
and they got punished for it at London Dungeon.
Yes, my God.
A true naturalistic narrative has transpired.
I'm having
here.
a mind-blown moment.
Yeah. So, for me, this is interesting because it's ironic. I visited landmarks in London way more when I used to live in Sheffield and visit my cousins here than I have since I've moved here.
Yeah, that's so weird.
Right? It's so weird, right? So I love going to Central and meeting you guys and just hanging around, and I miss going to some of the food places that we go to in Leicester Square and just eating stuff and having fun. And this whole lockdown has made me appreciate it even more and realize that I actually took it for granted, and I just can't wait for all these restrictions to be lifted. Yeah. And by the time people listen to it, they probably have been. Yes. I hope anyway. But so that we can actually go out again.
Yeah, no, I have been for like over a decade or more a massive hermit. I don't like going out much. I don't like socializing often. But after this pandemic, I'm going to force myself to leave the room and the house.
Maybe he'll finally visit me, boys. Maybe.
I have like lost my fucking mind knowing that there's all these places I want to visit again. I want to go see the aquarium, see all these places we talked about. I can't go anywhere. I'm stuck at home. I can't travel anywhere out of fear of catching the corona. It's okay, Lawrence.
By the time people are listening to this, your future self will already be out.
My future self will be like wandering the streets like a ghost in Victorian attire. Like, I'm back in my home.
Exactly. And, again, same with me. I took all of this for granted. And I do wish that hopefully by the time this comes out, that COVID has indeed fucked off once and for all. Or if it hasn't, it's likely under control and people have stopped dying. But
there's before we leave off or anything, I do have a few more, both negatives and positives I do want to touch on. One massive negative, especially for me, considering where I come from, about London, I hate how little real open nature there is here.
Yeah.
Like, where I come from, I lived next to a national reserve, I guess you'd call them, like nature reserve. So we had like mountains and forests and everything. Literally, you walk out the house, you walk like half a mile and you're in one of the biggest forests, right? Here, it's like I have parks that I've walked through to the point where I'm sick of them because I've walked every path. I know them. I don't have much nature here that can like calm me in times like this. Whereas if I was spending like lockdown back where I come from, I'd be free to like wander the pastures and go up the hills and mountains and go scream, at the gods in the sky from a hill and be like, I sacrifice my goat to end this pandemic.
To be fair, but
here it's like I can't do any of that.
But you can't have both ways, Lawrence. That's
obviously I know.
Like, you can't have this amazing metropolis experience and like go into Camden town and like eating as much as you want and also having forests and hills to climb on. Like,
and there's one more thing that directly leads on from this, right? Because of the way this place is spaced and how cramped everything is, I can't be noisy a lot of the time. I hate that you can't, like, when you're really annoyed or angry, go have a shout in this country or a scream or just be like, just let it out. Because where I come from, you could go off to, like, an isolated area in some nature and just scream. And be like, I've let out so much stress, that felt great. Here, if someone hears you scream, you're getting a like noise complaint. If someone hears you talk too loud at like 1 a.m., it's like, get him out! He's making noise. He has friends. I don't like it.
He's doing a podcast. How dare he?
How dare he?
So, a few things I want to talk about from what you guys mentioned. First of all, have you guys been to the London Zoo?
No,
yes,
unfortunately I haven't.
It's a great place. I went there from sixth form. It was the last trip we went on. It was like a reward trip for all the exams.
I have reservations with zoos for ethical reasons.
Same, likewise. Of course. I was about to say, but
it was still, obviously, I love seeing the animals. I can't help that.
The thing I look forward to the most, even though I saw giraffes and flamingos and whatever, was the reptile room or the reptile house or whatever.
Ah, yes.
Again, from Harry Potter. So I had to get in there and check out all the things. Sadly, the python was not there. But it was good fun. But the other thing I wanted to say was, do you guys remember the Jubilee that the Queen had in 2012? It was the
barely.
Which Jubilee was it? Was it like the Diamond Jubilee? I can't remember which one it was.
I barely remember.
But
I remember I was busy reading the Mayan calendar and being like, "It's it, boys." This is it.
But people had parties in parks or whatever, and I kind of missed out on that because I was a bit sick at the time. So I'm looking forward to 2022 when we get a 4-day weekend in the summer and COVID's hopefully finally over and we can celebrate
party
the Queen.
time, boys.
We can celebrate the Queen being immortal. God save the Queen. And just have
our
fun.
Lich Queen rises once more.
God damn it. Wow. We're really losing the plot, boys. We're really losing the plot.
Look, I've been inside for a long time. If the Queen is a Lich Queen, then I'd believe it. You can't tell me she's not.
Yeah.
Have you seen Prince Philip? My God.
Oh my God, that's such bad timing considering when we're recording this, but oh God.
I know.
Anyways.
Well, you know what? I think just to say this, I think they've both been a great couple and great monarchs for this country. That's all I'm going to say.
What's that got to do with
the monarchist has appeared? Hunt him down.
You both know I'm a constitutional monarchist. That's never going to change.
Yeah, I'm bringing the guillotine as we speak. Watch yourself.
Okay, that's...
Viva la revolution! Wait, no, that's the wrong country.
That's the wrong country! You're talking about London! We never had... I mean... I guess Cromwell, but
we kind of did.
Yeah.
But it was very short-lived, and thank goodness for that.
And
I mean, I like celebrating Christmas goodness.
Yeah, but
But to just wrap up now, I guess I wanted to say that London is a great place. If you live here, appreciate it more. If you don't, come visit us. We'd love to see you at some point. Obviously, don't dox us, please. We won't enjoy that.
You saying that just makes it more likely.
Well, I'll just say this. I won't be your friend if you dox me. But if I, see you in the city somewhere, I'll say hi to you so long as you don't know where I live, okay? Just play it cool.
Okay.
Yeah, Joe will give you a hug if he finds you naturally and not through weird, sketchy means.
If it's allowed to hug people by then.
If you're not, crawling in through his window at night, he might actually be your friend.
Exactly.
Again.
And if it's allowed and we're not have to socially distance.
My final thoughts would be that, same, I love London. I wish nothing but the best for London, and I just want to be able to have a well-paid enough job to be able to live in London. Because for all its glory, and for all its multiculturalism, or for all its absolutely amazing creativity, London is expensive. Let's not lie to each other. London is fucking expensive. And I just want maybe house prices to drop down a bit, and I just want to be able to afford to live independently in this city. Thank you. That's my final thoughts.
I do
lower the house market, please.
So if the housing minister's listening, you know what to do.
Yes, please.
Yeah. I do have some context I want to give for something. One of the reasons this city appeals to me aesthetically the way it does, and I appreciate it more than I think I would otherwise, I come from a country that used to be under communist rule. I think it was one of the last to stop being under communist rule. Now, anyone who knows anything about architecture to any degree, or is a fan of the subject,
the shitty communist architecture.
They know about brutalist and communist architecture and what that looks like. They know about the tower blocks made for just mass people to sit in that are just grey bricks on the horizon that look like shit. Now, coming from somewhere where that existed to somewhere where you have the kind of architecture you will see on the Houses of Parliament, you will see at the Old Bailey and any of the museums at St. Paul's Cathedral, it makes you very appreciative of the aesthetic power of this city. And it makes you, the entire atmosphere and vibe it creates, it's so different. So yeah, that's what I appreciate most about this place. But as we did mention, the biggest gripe, cost and such, it's probably part of the reason why I have no plans to spend my entire life living here. I do plan to just leave at some point because I don't want to waste all of my money before retirement just affording to exist. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, if we make this podcast sustainable...
Fingers crossed, please subscribe so we can stay in London. But, I absolutely agree with Florence on the whole socialist block idea. I hate those blocks. They're so ugly. And again, the whole visual shifts coming here and just seeing all that compared to the old blocks. And even now, have you noticed when you come back now to Romania, or you go back to your hometown, the scaling of it and everything else is just so much more tinier. And
I don't know if where I live it's like that, but some of the cities in Romania, absolutely, I see the difference.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But hey, when you go back to the motherland and you're
I can't believe you sang that. I can't. Not many people are gonna recognize that, but
Yeah, but the ones who will, they know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not from a communist country.
That's a calling card to our people.
That is an anthem, bro. That is an absolute anthem.
One thing I wanted to mention, a little bit of a weird trivia. This weird cultural superstition thing that Persians have is that, first of all, they always save a bit of the umbilical cord when the child is born. And the second thing is that if that person grows up and they want to stay somewhere for the rest of their life, they have to go to the river of the city that they're in and they have to throw the umbilical cord in the river. So
here years, I was hoping they'd cook it later and be like, now you have to eat it.
Oh gosh, that is
right. So for years, my mom's been like, "Oh, you should go and throw your umbilical cord into the Thames River," and I'm like, "Nah."
Oh god, the Thames is already disgusting enough. Please don't. No one do that. Anyone listening, do not throw your baby shit.
I don't need some mutant version of myself just crawling out the river and coming to find me to cover me in green.
I'm glad we just mentioned the Thames because my god, that is one of the few things I hate about the city. That river is so filthy.
Disgusting.
Good lord,
I hate the River Thames.
You look into it and your reflection is destroyed when it looks back. It looks sadder. It looks worse. you look into the river and you see your sickly future dead self stare back at you.
It's absolutely disgusting. I hate the Thames so much. Hate the Thames.
One of my friends whom I used to walk up and down the canals with has written a really good story about the River Thames. I'm not going to say more about that, in case he doesn't like me talking about it. Yes. Because he listens to this podcast. So,
my lad, come here. Yeah. You're a good one.
Shout out.
Shout out. So, guys, unless you have anything else to add, I think we're gonna wrap it up. I
think we've said a lot about London. I think if we ever have more to say, you know where to find us.
We can always do a part 2 of this. But for now,
we can always do a part 2. For now, we're gonna leave it at there. I'm just gonna plug our stuff because I really, 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 really want you guys to go and like the video, to share the video, because that really, really helps us out. To follow us on social media at Faffing Friends. It doesn't matter where it is, you'll find us pretty much everywhere. And that was by design. We're literally everywhere. There's not one place you can go and not find us. You could pretty much listen to us and like us and find our socials pretty much everywhere. Absolutely. So you have no excuse, right? So like us, share us, comment, because we really want to subscribe and we really want to know what you think. And
I do want more interaction. I love interacting with you guys.
We really love it when you guys interact, especially when you vote in our polls. So we'll probably have a poll for this episode up as well, just like the other ones that we've had so far.
Would you like to live in London? The poll.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And
exactly.
Yes, please help us.
I mean, I can sell you on this way better. Are you ready, boys? I'm going to give you the pitch of your lives.
Go on.
You have such incredible personalities like the great Lawrence himself on this podcast. Do you really want to deprive others of being able to listen to me and hear my silky smooth voice and hear my amazing opinions that are better than everyone else and that I'm right that Sherlock on the BBC is bad?
Wow.
If you really want to deprive other people of this incredible experience, then I guess don't share it. But we know that you love other people. We know that you want them to have the best there is. So send them my way. I will enlighten them all.
If you guys share this episode and like it, share it far and wide so everybody listens to it and make it go viral, then we'll have an episode where Ivaylo and Lawrence just fight about Sherlock. BBC
my
Sherlock,
god!
Just like we had with the physical.
So you can stab me in the back again, and then suddenly reveal suddenly reveal you're like Sherlock. Is that what's gonna happen?
Ooh, I'm not
saying
from
behind with the steel chair. Pow!
With the steel chair, like Jesus Christ. But yes, please support us. We love making these, and we love making them for you. It's been a great activity for us to do during lockdown, and we hope we entertain you. As always, my goal is to get at least someone to have fun and to smile and to just like brighten up their day. And please help us, because if you don't, Lawrence has to leave London, and that will be a tragedy.
That's not a joke.
We're using my future leaving of London as like a conditional.
We'll do an episode where Lawrence finally moves out of London. You know.
It's just like an hour of footage of like a ship slowly sailing into the distance.
But yes,
it's like an old-fashioned pirate ship. I'm on the like top at the crow's nest that look like Jack Sparrow. Like, bye, my friends.
So this has been Faffing with Friends. I've been Ivaylo.
I have been Lawrence the Great.
And I've been Joe the Humble.
Wow.
See you guys next time.
Goodbye.
Bye.